When it comes to ketamine, children as young as 12 are getting hooked on the horse tranquilizer.
It is widely available. It is a relatively cheap price point, even comparatively to things that are socially acceptable, such as alcohol. You know, for £10 now, you can purchase a gram of ketamine, and you know, it is available on things such as social media and delivered to your door.
We're hearing that young people are putting their pocket money together and buying bags of ketamine. It's just how times have really changed, and it's really worrying.
For a fact, round here, the youngest person I know is year 6 in primary school.
Taking ketamine?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's really scary. But year 7 onwards is the most common.
And there is a growing crisis we need to talk about.
Across the UK, a quiet shift is happening. Children as young as 12 are trying drugs for the first time. Not in alleyways, not at parties, but in school toilets, at skate parks, in bedrooms. Early substance use is at its highest point on record, with 79% of young people who enter treatment being people who have been using since the age of 15. I've reached out to 2 individuals to speak to them about their experience with drug use.
I feel like there's no way to really summarize addiction, no matter your experience with it, because it's not a easy thing. It's not a small thing, really. Well, it's not a small thing. It's hard to summarize addiction. I was a kid at the time. I didn't enjoy it then. I was addicted for about 3 to 4 years. I don't remember the timeline. I don't fully remember any of it really, but I had a lot of unmanaged pain for a long time, and then I ended up with a burst cyst in my abdomen that then caused peritonitis, which is an infection in your abdominal wall. And normally they would do surgery to scrape out all of that infection, but I was too unstable to have that, so I was basically put on IV paracetamol, morphine, antibiotics, steroids. And when they first gave me the morphine, it was really strange. When I was younger as well, I was terrified of addiction, because I'd seen what it had done to like family members and stuff, and it kind of became this thing that was like shameful and like made you a disappointment and disgust. And it wasn't, this person needs help, this person has stuff going on, this person's trying to cope. It was the awful, the horrible, the disgusting, all this stuff. And it's still seen that way a lot now by society, which is a large part of the problem, and a large part, I know for me, as to why I didn't try and get external help as much as I should have, and as much as I could have. I had decided when I was quite young that I weren't turning 18. It was scary. It was, you became an adult, and I didn't want that. My health weren't going to get better. Things, I'd already had to drop out of college because of my health. It was, is there any way up from here, really? And so that kind of reinforced everything. And I'd got to a point where I wasn't even using to get high. It was just to not be withdrawing, because withdrawals are horrific. I don't think anything can compare to it. I've seen people compare heroin withdrawals to coming off of escitalopram, which is a antidepressant. No, they are not even on the same level. you know, you just start counting down the days until you're going to have to start withdrawing again because you have no money or your prescriptions run out or whatever. It's just, it stops being fun anymore, it stops being a coping mechanism, and you're just trying to, like, it starts out keeping you alive, and then you're almost having to keep it alive so it doesn't make you horrifically ill. It's like you're torn between the two, and it's a hard one because I know even when I first started getting sober, I decided I was going to go through the withdrawals. I was going to do it. I deserved it. I'd put myself in that position.
All answers point to one singular source: ketamine. Now, while cannabis and alcohol are both substances which have been seen in my research, but ketamine is on the rise, with 63% of respondents to a survey I conducted saying that ketamine was common with under 25-year-olds.
It's sad and it's scary, but then I think what's more sad and scary is the fact that people are feeling the need to turn to these things at such young ages. I mean, ketamine especially is pushed as a party drug, but it's not. No. I don't think it can fall in that category. It might be seen as a party drug, but I don't think it can really, I guess, not meet the criteria, but fall under the same umbrella as the rest, because the rest are like uppers and boosters, whereas ket's a downer. It's used to sedate horses. You know, it's a big thing.
Many users don't realise the risks, such as addiction and long-term bladder damage. Now, 50% of drug users are saying that they are taking drugs just because simply they are bored.
There's nothing anymore. Kids are bored.
Is that true? Children are risking their health and even their very lives because they're bored.
I myself have had a lot of experiences with substance abuse, as well as a couple of people that I'm close with, so family members, as well as my dead boyfriend. We didn't know if he was being safe with his drug use. We didn't know if he was doing things like testing. He was neglecting other responsibilities in his life, so he wasn't doing college work. He wasn't really, and I think it ultimately it really put into perspective my own addiction and how that impacts other people in ways that I hadn't really thought about before, because I could see it from a different point of view. So in that area, I think it actually helped me in my own struggles with addiction, if that makes sense, because I realized, if I don't get better, if I don't get sober, then I would pretty much just end up like him, probably dead.
Deaths due to illicit substances have increased 20-fold since 2014, but these deaths are increasingly occurring in complex polydrug settings, raising doubt over whether single substance drug policies can reduce harm. Opioids, cocaine, and benzodiazepines were frequently co-implicated in deaths, with the average number of substances involved in each case also rising. The study identifies a demographic shift. While harms of ketamine use among young people remain a serious concern, deaths are increasingly occurring among older, socio-economically disadvantaged independent drug users, with 89% of deaths being accidental and 6% of deaths being suicidal. But deaths aren't with the partners of substance users, but children too. I've met with Carl to talk about the death of his son due to an overdose.
My experience with substance abuse is from my own son, Sam, who was 17, who developed a problem with drugs that eventually cost him his life. he was struggling with his mental health, and I think he started taking drugs to help with that. I wasn't actually aware of a drug problem until it was well underway. Drugs eventually did take hold of my son and became the most important thing in his life. He would barefaced lie to me. It got to the point where I couldn't trust him at all. He didn't think nothing of lying to get his drugs. He manipulated. I mean, he was a cracking lad, but in the end, the drugs manipulated him to the point where he would lie any way he could just to get his hands on the drugs. He told me to trust him and not to judge him, and only to find out that he'd sold his iPad and bought £400 worth of drugs that day. That night he went to bed. Said I'd see you in the morning. I went to wake him, and he'd passed away because he took at least 4 lethal doses of different types of drugs. And that about sums it up. The drugs do become the most important thing in their life.
What are your thoughts on seeing someone very close to you have a drug-related death, and how did that affect your addiction?
It's a hard thing to even talk about because in the moment I was so deep in it that I couldn't. It's so hard to explain, and it sounds so awful, but I didn't feel anything because I couldn't. I knew how I was gonna feel and how I do feel now, and it's awful and I hate it. But at the time I couldn't feel anything, and I then hated that further. Throughout all of it, I couldn't help. My thoughts during all of it was on Sarah. I couldn't, like after it happened, she rang me and I said, do you want me to come over? And she said, no, it's fine, but I couldn't not for my own sanity. It was, but you never want to hear someone cry like that or be in that state, never mind so young. And being in the same situation myself, it was sitting there knowing that this had happened to someone, you know, my age, a year younger.
Ketamine bladder is a challenging condition to treat, with one core principle being abstinence from the drug. This is sort of monitored by doctors very closely to see if they are recovering over a long period of time.
So I actually have one of the conditions that makes up ket bladder. Ket bladder is normally like a group of, I say normally, it is a group of bladder disorders that is caused by damage from drugs. The groups that are under ket bladder though can also be caused by other things. The form I have is called Fowler's syndrome. It's something only people assigned female at birth can develop, and it causes your sphincter, which is what allows you to go to the toilet, it cramps and doesn't uncramp, basically. You might not feel it when it first cramps. Like I just knew I couldn't go to the toilet. Like I didn't need it, but I couldn't go. Then 3 days later I actually told someone, and at that point my bladder had nearly ruptured. There is so much shame on bladder issues, especially in younger people. A lot of the things that fall under ket bladder is incontinence. That is seen as such a shameful thing, but nobody wants to have an accident. It's not an intentional thing. I don't understand really why people are shamed for it. No one is going to do that willingly. It's sad and it's scary because, I mean, you've got 15-year-olds developing bladder failure, and you know, it's medication for life, it's surgeries, it's catheters, it's all sorts, and it's all stuff that, you know, no one at any age, never mind that age, should have to go through.
I'm not well aware of ketamine, to be honest. I always thought drugs were massively expensive, but to my shock I found out that you can get drugs for a couple of quid, enough to keep someone high or oblivious to the realities of the world. Sam used to ask me for a couple of quid to go and get a can of Monster from the local shop, and then he would wander off into a different part of town. I'd quiz him on that, and he would say they didn't have the can of Monster that he wanted at the local shop, only for me to find out that he was meeting a drug dealer in Chorley Town Centre to buy a few pills that would get him by. So what I thought was an innocent, giving him money for a can of pot, basically, he was buying his drugs with.
The drug market is changing, it's shifting, it's mixing, and something far more unpredictable has begun creeping into UK streets. It's called xylazine, a veterinary sedative never designed for humans, known for causing deep unconsciousness, slowed breathing, and catastrophic blood pressure drops. What people think is clean ketamine may be mixed with substances that put them into deep sedation or stop them breathing altogether.
The awareness isn't out there, the accessibility isn't out there. I mean, you Google drug testing kits, and most of the ones that come up, you're paying like 20 quid for them, and they're for a small group of things. They're not for like your wider substances. I can't think of specific examples, but the websites that do them cheap, do them at accessible prices, that are genuine, that are actually trying to help people, aren't pushed forward. There isn't the awareness in schools and colleges of, test kits are available. And I do think there should be more no questions asked accessibility to those things, because they're a small thing, but they're life-saving.
So, what are the UK's next steps?
Next steps, I think we need to clamp down on the dealing of drugs. It's quite obvious on the streets where I live in Chorley that drugs are being dealt on the streets. You can see it during the day. Whether or not you can take drugs and control it for social activities. I think, to be honest with you, I mean, I like a pint, and people see that as a drug, and people will argue that I'm a drug user. But I think in the youth, drugs are replacing the likes of going out for a pint and stuff like that.
I think that people are always going to do drugs, especially if they have the circumstances that predispose you to wanting to or needing a crutch. So I think it's definitely inevitable. However, I think it's really important for people to be educated on things like harm reduction. So how to safely administer drugs, how to test them so you know what you're taking is actually what you think you're taking, how to accurately measure out doses so you don't have accidental overdoses.
Well, we have safer drug use consumption sites where drug users can go into a dedicated safe space to take their drugs without feeling the shame and the sort of judgment from others.
As we come through to the injecting space, you'll see it's called the using space. And all of that was about making it slightly less formal and a bit more welcoming. People come in, they'll speak to the staff, we talk to them about what equipment they're going to use, depending on where they're injecting, what they're using. It's trying to encourage people to think about where they're injecting and where's safe. We're using a lot of visual tools to really just engage with people and say, have a think about this.
People are going to use drugs. they have forever, and they probably will forever. All sorts of safe use sites offer just than, you know, a space where someone can shoot up or sniff or whatever. There's so much more than that.
Harm reduction is used as a term now to describe users keeping an eye on their substances, making sure to test them, making sure to mix what they can and can't combine substances with. Coke speeds up the heart, ketamine slows it down. When these two substances are taken together, it can be fatal.
Just provide more, and those places as well having access to things like counselling, and as well counselling. I think a big thing with counselling services is most places you have 6 weeks, you have 6 sessions. That isn't enough for a lot of addicts. Will start off with like rules and morals for themselves and then end up spiralling to a point where they go completely out the window.
If anybody's seen the film Requiem for a Dream, I mean, I watched that with Sam, but that's a spot-on film where eventually the drugs will take over. If you're not careful, the drugs will take over your life and become the only thing that's important.
What's it been like with your parents and stuff like that?
Okay, they don't actually know. They think this today is about chronic illness and the impacts on young people's mental health. My dad has no idea. My mum, I think she's thought about it, and I think to some extent she knows, but I don't think she really knows or wants to accept it or talk about it. It is something I am going to tell them. I do want to tell them, I'm just not ready to have that conversation yet. It's difficult looking back though, because I mean, I look at photos even 2 years ago and it's terrifying. I found some the other day and I don't even look there. Like I was scared to go to sleep every night, and I knew with the physical state I was in medically, there was a chance I wouldn't have woken up, and then to have the drugs on top of that, add in even more risk. You know, it's hard enough telling your parents that you're scared to go to sleep because you might not wake up. Then having to tell them that it's also because you're on drugs. How do you do it? You know, only 2.7% of opioid addicts will actually manage to get sober and recover. But that number is on the rise. It used to be, I think it was 2013, it was 1% flat. So for it to have gone up 1.7% is an improvement. It is scary. It's still scary now. Especially the fact that I can think, I can feel properly, I can do all that, and it is still so insanely overwhelming. Just existing is overwhelming, but it does get easier and it is worth it. You know, you don't need substances to live. You don't need, you know, you shouldn't have to self-medicate to be able to live. It is worth it, it is, but at the same time, if you aren't ready, I completely get it, because forced recovery doesn't typically work. It doesn't, you know, you have to be ready yourself, but when you are ready, if you don't want to do it alone, you know, there are ways you can do it not alone. If, you know, your brain's wandering, it's got that to think of and focus on. It's the little things that, for me at least, have made the biggest difference, like the littlest changes. Yeah.
Us survive what many don't. In a generation where the drug landscape is changing faster than the systems built to protect them.
The come up was fast, the come down was harder.
But being able to move on and start anew, that's the change that truly matters.
Ketamine. Now, while there's a pigeon, that's so distracting. From the top.